You're listening to Healthcare Now Radio. Stand by for This Just In, the latest in healthcare innovation and technology trends with your HIT advisor, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in, and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these half-hour segments, I'll bring you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. For this episode, though, my 94th episode, we're going to speak to a good, longtime friend, Steve Weisman. Steve's an attorney by trade, focuses on estate planning, probate, and identity theft, but Steve is also a professor, editor, and very accomplished writer. Welcome back to the show, Steve.
It's good to be with you. 94 episodes. You're closing in on that 100 pretty rapidly.
I know. It's been a rocket ship. What a tremendous learning experience, though. I mean, this is like one of the best gigs you can ever have, and you've been a host for a very long time, and I attribute my radio chops to you, but what a great way to just collaborate with people. And you know what the best of it is? I learned so much just by, talking to people and having a show, get to talk to people. It's great.
That is one of the best parts of being a talk radio host is actually what you get to learn and, from all these great guests.
Yeah. It's like free. I consider it free consulting. So I get all this free, free consulting, free advisement. I love it. But I appreciate you reaching out to me here so quickly and bringing this to my attention, the importance, and we want to get the word out. So, we scheduled this very special show to cover the latest cyber extortion, ransomware, virus attack, WannaCry. So thank you again, and let's just dive right in. So how did this attack occur, Steve?
Well, you have to go back to a hacking or a leaking, we're still not sure, at the National Security Agency. And what happens is the National Security Agency, for security and intelligence purposes, will, during their research, gather what they call zero-day exploits. These are vulnerability in software programs and computers that are previously undiscovered. And therefore, they enable someone to take advantage of it for perhaps surveillance, but also for harm as well. You can actually go back in history. The first major time these 0 days were used by the intelligence community was a joint enterprise between the United States and Israel that destroyed the then Iranian nuclear program. So these are things that, in this instance, a number of these 0 days were released. They were stolen, then they turned over to a group called shadow brokers who didn't do the actual hacking, but released these. And one of them that they released was called Eternal Blue. This is a flaw in the Microsoft Windows operating system. And what happened was the hackers who caused this major ransomware attack, they took that and they used that as a base for attaching their ransomware to that to take advantage of getting it onto the computers around the world. It should also be noted, though, and this is really critical, that all of these sophisticated malware programs that are used, like the ransomware, they have to be downloaded. And almost universally, the way they are downloaded is through phishing or more sophisticated spear phishing, where employees, people receive an email and there's a link and they're lured into clicking on that link. They click on that link and they download the malware. So in this case, hundreds of thousands of organizations were hit around the world, and many of them were ill-prepared because they had not installed patches for this that Microsoft had already made available.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I know it's cursory, but I tell everybody, my companies, my family, if you don't know, if it's not a truly trusted source, and you know why that person would be emailing you, do not click on links. I mean, it's a great way to keep yourself, keep your computer updated at all times, all patches at all times, and you can just set that as an automatic feature for a lot of our systems. But then certainly don't click on links from people. And also pay attention, like Wells Fargo, whoever your bank is, Bank of America, whomever it is, when if you look carefully, you can usually see this stuff is unsophisticated a lot of the times when they're trying to phish. It's not the right logo. They're spelling off. The URL is something's not right with the URL. There's so many ways to tell. I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect and it's a perfect system, but you can reduce a lot of that just by paying attention. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And the ones that give me the biggest smiles are the ones with the horrible grammar.
Yeah, so true. So with this WannaCry, who do you think, who's behind this attack?
Guys will hack into the computers of people that are unwilling accomplices and unknowing accomplices. They take over their email and they make this part of what they call a botnet. And this is a network of computers that have been taken over to send out these kinds of malware through attachments and all. And you're right. You've got to. You can't. Trust me, you can't trust anyone. And when it comes to these links, you really can't click on them unless you've confirmed. And then one of the things I tell people to confirm, and this is interesting too, is let's say you get something about your credit card. Go to the back of your credit card. There'll be the real 800 number to contact your bank where you can find out if this was legit or not. There are criminals who will get the phone number of like Bank of America and change one digit. So if you are not careful in calling the number, you actually will think you got Bank of America, but instead you're going to get the bad guy.
Right. No, good point. So who do you think is really behind this attack?
There are a lot of security experts right now who are pointing the finger at North Korea. And North Korea has become particularly active in cyber criminal activities in the last few years. They have also, interestingly enough, unlike say Russian governmental cyber attacks or Chinese governmental cyber attacks, North Korea does it for profit. They've got a country with a failing economy, and they actually do this as a profit center. They will do international bank robbery. They were behind the $100 million hacking of the Bank of Bangladesh. They are actively attempting to hack into the SWIFT system, which is used by international banks. And there are some indications, because of similarities that you can find, the so-called fingerprints in this particular ransomware, the WannaCry, that look like it's North Korean, but I don't think so. And I don't think so because there is a certain lack of sophistication in this particular WannaCry, including the manner in which the bitcoins that would be paid as ransom would have to be individually verified rather than being done as part of the program. So that's just an example where I think it's organized crime. I don't know where. It could be anywhere in the world. I definitely think it's not in Russia, because Russian hackers are allowed by the Russian government to do whatever they want as long as they do the Russian government bidding and as long as they don't attack Russian institutions. And in this case, Russia was hit a great deal, which also is interesting because you may find that a level of cooperation between Russian cybersecurity and American cybersecurity, which we've never seen, to try and find out who actually is behind this.
No, excellent, Steve. So I assume this is going to get worse?
Oh, yeah. It's going to get much worse. And part of the problem is that this particular ransomware attack pretty much got cut off early when a researcher was trying to even measure the attack, went into the code and found that there was a kill switch. And the kill switch would be used if a particular company that had been attacked had paid the ransom, so it would stop it against them. But this thing was not set up properly. However, I've already seen 4 new strains of the WannaCry, and there will be more coming. To make things worse, here's something, Justin, I haven't seen out generally in the media that's kind of interesting. Shadow brokers. Shadow brokers, who were the ones that released the sophisticated vulnerability, the flaw in the Windows operating system that was used here. They have just announced that they are going to be selling subscriptions starting June 1st. They will sell to cyber criminals who want it the vulnerabilities that they say they have stolen from the NSA. So we could see a much bigger kind of attack that will happen. And of course, one of the reasons this one was so bad was the universality of the Windows operating system. But in addition, particularly in the UK, a lot of the systems there, and particularly in their medical field, use the Windows XP operating system. Now, Windows XP has not been supported for about 2 years, so they're using one that was already going to be vulnerable. Now, what happened was Microsoft actually, in an unprecedented action over the weekend, actually issued a patch for Windows XP. But you've got a lot of people who were using Windows XP. They are really vulnerable. You've got others that were using pirated version of Windows. Now, you mentioned having automatic updates of your the programs you use, which I totally agree with, and which I do, and I do it with my Microsoft Windows. If you've got a pirated version of Windows, you are not getting automatic updates, and you're going to be vulnerable. But here's something else that you haven't heard. There is one particular area of the United States, as far as our economy goes and finance, that still uses Windows XP to a large degree, and that's our ATM system. And so I predict you're going to see some major attacks against ATMs in the United States within the next 6 months.
Wow, no, that would that's a little scary, but certainly understandable. Why do you think this was the work of relatively unsophisticated hackers?
What happened was they did it on a large scale, which was nice, but the large scale was more a creature or a factor of the eternal blue, the flaw that was found. Because what happened was this eternal blue would, when a particular computer got hacked, it would automatically send it out to every other computer on the network. So it made it seem like it took more effort than perhaps these hackers were aware of. The biggest thing, the biggest problem that I saw, which I showed to me it was unsophisticated, when they did not have built into the programs for someone to pay the Bitcoin into multiple accounts, which would be more difficult to trace, and then get the key to decrypt it. They, in fact, only used 4 different Bitcoin accounts. Those are going to be a bit easier to trace. They also are going to have to manually, out of how many are going to be trying to pay the ransom and get decrypted, they're going to have to manually deal with each one rather than automatically do it through the programs. So already there's evidence of people who paid the ransom on the first day and still have not been decrypted. And it's not necessarily that the hackers are just bluffing and we're going to not to take the ransom and not decrypt. I think it's a matter of they were not prepared for this kind of a massive response. So those are a couple of the things that make me think this was not the brightest bulbs.
Wow, no, that's fascinating. So what's the role of shadow brokers in this attack and in this development I hear about that's coming June 1st?
Yeah. This is going to be very interesting. Shadow brokers did not do the stealing from the National Security Agency, but the materials was turned over to them. They, though, are saying, and we have no way of backing it up other than the fact that at least as far as the eternal blue goes, we do know that there have been these zero-day exploits that were stolen from the NSA. So shadow brokers now is in possession of these and is saying on the dark web to criminals, if you pay the price, if you pay a subscription, every month we will release new 0 days. So this could be really very dangerous. Now you go back to the NSA and our intelligence community was aware that this eternal blue, the flaw in the Windows operating system, a particularly major flaw, was out there. And they had contacted, they being the NSA, Microsoft. Microsoft had a patch for this that they put out in March. And so to a certain extent, this is the fault of people who were using outdated Windows systems or didn't bother to update their software. And like you say, that's something that is just so essential. There are a lot of strains of ransomware for which they are still getting people to fall for it, even though there are security software programs out there that will protect you. By the way, here's one for your listeners.
Yeah.
A number of the security software companies got together along with international law enforcement organizations, and they formed a website called No More Ransom, and it's www.nomoreransom.org. And if you have become a victim of ransomware, you can go to this site, which is done by security companies and international law enforcement, and you can put in the information, and if it is one of the ransomware programs that they do have defenses for, they will free of charge unencrypt it for you. Now, that won't work at the moment against the WannaCry, but this is something that individuals can use in the future if they do fall a victim.
No, thank you. NoMoreRansom.org. I'm actually going to write that down myself.
Yeah, check it out, Justin. I think you'll find it interesting.
No, fascinating. And for those that may have joined a little late, my guest today is cybersecurity expert Stephen J.J. Weisman. So shifting a little, shifting our gears, and obviously I do a lot on the healthcare side, and this was certainly targeted or at least hit the medical industry in the UK particularly bad. So why was that?
Yeah, part of it in the UK, they are very, very much involved with using the Windows XP system for a lot of their computers. But, it goes beyond that for not just their computers, but the vastly growing Internet of Things. And, when you're talking about in the medical world, you're talking about things like, which we saw here in the United States, the St. Jude's medical implantable cardiac devices were hackable. There was also another heart monitor that was hackable. And here what you have is you have certain the devices themselves, the security was not built in adequately when they were developed. They also may be connecting to using the outdated systems as well. Here's one thing that bigger companies should be doing that they're not, and that is whitelisting. You've heard the term blacklisting, and blacklisting, and even with software, it prevents certain programs from being downloaded. That's great, but what about when you get the 0-day, one that you don't have a defense for? Well, with whitelisting, this is a type of analytic software that will not allow anything to be downloaded unless it's on an approved list. So even if you're backing up your devices, even if you're training your employees not to click on links, even if you're using the latest security software, there can be instances where the bad guys can get through these defenses. But if you've got the whitelisting software, they won't be able to implant it. And the medical industry has always been a big target, both because they share so much information, and there's a lot of personal information that can be used by cyber criminals. So they're always going to be a target, and their very strength of being able to share information can be a weakness, which is because you've got a lot of people involved. So in that industry, as in so many, they've got to have the proper analytics, they've got to have the proper training, and the security has to be a whole way of life.
Yeah, and the last time you were on the show, a couple of months ago, you talked about just the sheer value of medical information over, say, financial information. So, that alone, you can see it being a big target. But so let's walk over to best practices, or at least lessons, we can be learning about the Internet of Things vulnerabilities, and particularly in the medical field.
Yeah, in the medical field, it's absolutely terrific what can be done now with the Internet of Things, and the idea of MRIs and CAT scanners linked to computer systems. It's wonderful. It's terrific. But terrific is also the adverbial form of terrifying. So what we have to recognize is anything that is connected to a computer is subject to being hacked. And so we have to take the basic steps of, we need to do more encryption. We need to keep our systems up to date. We need to keep the security software, we've got to have that down. We've got to use whitelisting. We've got to train employees. there's all kinds, the technology has been part of the problem. The technology is a big part of the solution too. And so it takes a commitment. It takes dollars. This is one of the arguments in the UK. They were talking about they had decreases in spending. They chose not to spend it on updating their computer systems. And in retrospect, they're finding it's going to cost them. So hopefully we're doing a better job here.
Yeah, no, and I mean, you bring up some very good points, because the Internet of Things is, in many cases, the future of healthcare. I mean, we are shifting. It's where I spend a lot of my time. We're shifting, not just here in America, but obviously, as you mentioned, globally towards the Internet of Things. And I mean, obviously, security needs to be front and center at all times. I mean, that's just getting proven every single day. So I guess you listed a lot of stuff, but is there anything else that individuals, companies, and medical care providers can be doing to protect themselves during this?
Yeah, they certainly want to back up data automatically. You want to also consider segmentation. Who has to have access to all of the data. So you may want to segment things. You also may want to use more dual-factor authentication for people to be able to access certain data sources or information. So you got to plan for Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong. But we do have various security software, dual-factor authentication. We do have a great analytics and defenses to be used, and it takes a commitment. And here again, it's companies are going to start being punished if they're not doing this. There was a hotel chain that was the victim of multiple data breaches, and the FTC took action against them, saying you are harming consumers, and the hotel chain challenged that, saying, well, you don't have the authority to bring an action against us. The court supported them. The hotel chain caved. But we are seeing, as companies like Yahoo have been showing lack security, it's going to affect mergers and acquisitions, as we saw with AT&T. It's hitting companies at bottom line. They've got to make this a more prominent motivation for them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And obviously, as you said, even predict it could get worse, in June and certainly this summer. As this starts to get out there more into the market and people kind of tap into ways to victimize people. Obviously, the money, there's a lot of opportunity there for them on the financial side, so they're going at it. So spend just a second there. The value, why do they do this? Why is this, certainly in the medical field, tell us just a couple minutes about a minute about the value of this information. Some people understand.
Okay. You get it. There's a couple of areas. Ransomware is one of the highest growing of the malware and cyber attacks because it's the simplest. They lock up your data. They don't have to do anything. You pay in a couple of days or they destroy your data. They get paid in Bitcoins. It's an effective way of extorting from people. But other instances, and previously, and what's still going on, is, as we talked about, particularly in the medical world, there will be a lot of personal information, including health insurance information, that is very valuable on the black market. So there will still be attacks against institutions to gather this information that can be used for medical identity theft. And medical identity theft is potentially fatal, because what can happen is someone can steal access to health insurance information. When the person who is then accessing illegally that health insurance, their medical records can get mixed in with the medical records of the victim, such that the real victim can even get a wrong blood transfusion. And the HIPAA laws are not quite as strong as they should be, in the sense that you can't remove readily the information of the identity thief from the medical record, because that violates his privacy rights. So instead, all you can have is a notation in there. So between the ransomware and the value of that information for identity theft purposes, which gets sold on the dark web and the black market, the medical industry is a prime target.
Yeah, and not even to bring into account the cost to our economy. I don't know the global cost, but I know here you're talking about just when you get into these fraud aspects, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in our growing healthcare market of just identity theft, of people not even being malicious to the fact that we're trying to ransom someone's information or money, but yet I want to steal your information so I can steal your healthcare coverage. That's a significant aspect to cost in our healthcare system.
Oh, it's incredible. And, I teach at Bentley University, and one of the courses I teach is white-collar crime. And one of the biggest areas of white-collar crime is Medicare fraud.
Yeah.
There has been a greater effort by the government to go against it, but it is a huge profit center for organized crime in the United States. And it costs we, the taxpayers and the economy, billions of dollars.
It does. Well, Steve, we're at time. It's so wonderful to have you back on the show and as my guest, and I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Anytime I can talk to you, it's a good day.
Thank you, my friend. And thank you to everyone for listening and joining us today. Please tune in weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. As always, you can track me on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag ThisJustIn so we can respond to your comments from the show. In addition, all my content will be posted at justinbarnes.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a terrific week.